Hey everybody, welcome back to a really special episode here with Kriben. We thought we'd bring him into the studio here in South Melbourne. And we wanted to take the time to share a little bit of the story, give a little bit of an update and go through a lot of information. But Kriben, it's great. It's great to have you here in studio for a change.
Oh, thanks for having me, James. And I think it's a little bit of an upgrade for the Gut Health Gurus podcast. Typically filmed in my house, so interesting to explore a slightly different format to see how it works and how the audience take this sort of format.
Yeah, no, I'm very happy to have you in. So I thought where we would start off is give people a little bit of context because, Nourish Me Organics has been going for so long. You were really a leader in that whole gut health space. And these days it's become a lot more popular. But I wanted you to start off with how did it all start and really why did you start?
That's a great place to start. Initially, I started Nourish Me because I was going through my own struggles with mental health. And if people go back to the first episode 1 that we did together, James, going back so many years ago, you can get more context behind that. But essentially, my life, I was working in the corporate field in the food arena and progressed quite well in my career, got to quite a senior level, and then my whole life collapsed. It went from being, quite happy and good in a sense, but then all of a sudden my marriage started to crumble. I found myself in an apartment really desperate and ready to end my life. But then obviously my children being an anchor point, my 3 beautiful children, I didn't go through that process. And I started to use my scientific mind, being a scientist, on how to overcome a lot of the struggles I was having with mental health. And then I discovered that sort of early scientific literature alluding to the gut having an impact on the brain and how we feel. And this was extremely early, like this is like probably 13, 14 years ago or so. And then putting steps into place to then heal my gut, and especially finding things like fermented foods, like kefir, and having immediate impact on how I feel. And then I slowly start to build a business around fermented foods. And so Nourish Me started in my apartment where we lived together, James, so long ago.
Back in the day.
Started to cultivate kefir grains, started from there, used to be on eBay.
By the way, when you first started brewing that stuff, I had no idea what it was. I'm like, what on earth is this strange substance? And now it's so popular. It's become such a big part of health.
Absolutely. And then back then, James, I was like literally shipping it. You remember I used to run down to the post office and and send it via like Australia Post, and had this really ordinary website that was very substandard. But then there was interest in it, and then slowly that business started to grow, and eventually the business started to get featured in some big publications like The Age. And at that point, it was really time to be more professional, so we moved into a proper factory and start to do things correctly. So and along that journey of healing and recovery, I did reconcile with my wife, got back together, and then the two of us have really steered the ship in terms of Nourish Me's growth from that initial phase of being a home-based business to now a commercial enterprise where we're sending thousands and thousands of cultures across the world. So that's in a nutshell, that's the journey of Nourish Me. And then from fermentation, we moved into other products that are related to digestive health as well.
Yeah, it's amazing, and it's such a huge achievement and such a big story as well. And when I met you, I was pretty young, and I think I always just looked at you as a great example of a guy solving things. Like maybe stuff didn't go so well, or you found yourself in a difficult place, but figuring it out and finding your way through. I always remember like, gosh, that's how to do it. And I wonder what you think, but I don't think that they really teach you in school or anything like that how to deal with stuff when it doesn't go so well. If you find yourself in a really dark position, you're kind of just thrown into it all.
Exactly. And I think with my journey, it was a journey of having that mindset to be willing to look for options and pathways and remedies and even esoteric ways to feel better. And so, and like you recall back in those days, James, I was doing acting classes with Claire Deer, and starting to explore that psychology aspect of it. And then also you having that psychology background as well to sort of chime in and help. So I think it's a multimodal thing when you're trying to solve a problem. You're trying to attack it at as many different angles as possible, and leaning pretty much on evidence, like what is the science actually saying, but also your intuition, what is actually working tangibly in your body. So if you're making particular changes and you're feeling that there's a move in a direction that's solving your problem, then you have to take that into account. But my approach is first to lean on evidence-based methodologies, but then also explore things that maybe science hasn't looked at yet either. So things like acting, you wouldn't think that that would be a potential solution or a way to remedy mental health. But from my own personal experience, that was one of the foundational aspects of me conquering this battle with mental health.
Do you think, like, people don't really choose to have these challenges, right? Like, people just find them in them, like, yeah, I mean, did you feel like you were active at all in your mental health problems, or did you just sort of find like, gosh, I don't know how, but I'm here?
I think with my mental health, a lot of it stemmed, it's in its self-reflection and going back in a time machine and exploring my life. A lot of the issues with my mental health started early in my development in childhood. So my childhood was great from a perspective that I had good family support. There was some issues, I guess, with my parents growing up. I don't want to particularly go into it in detail, but that was a contributing factor to the relationship that I had with my mother, which is not great as a kid, but now it's amazing. There's so much healing that has happened, but a lot of that impairment in early age was caused by my mother. So I'll be very straightforward with that. And so a lot of mental struggles and a lot of confidence issues, not having much belief in myself, came from that relationship that I had with my mum. So that was that relationship aspect, which I had to heal over these years. And then the other things are purely biological. So things like having a gut problem from a very young age, because I recall going overseas and getting an infection in my stomach around the age of 15, and had a lot of antibiotics during that stage. And so now when I think back, I pretty much decimated my gut microbiome at that point with so much antibiotic use to clear this infection. Because after that episode, I lost a hell of a lot of weight. And then I do remember my mood changing a lot. Literally overnight, having so much antibiotics, definitely I became a different person after that experience.
Yeah, it's crazy. And I think, you know, especially when you're a kid or you're growing up in these things, you don't choose them. And then you might find later in your life as you get older, like, okay, I'm not happy, I'm not healthy, my relationships are falling apart. And in some way, it's not your fault. It's not like you've intentionally done these things. People just get stuck. It's a similar thing that, you know, if you have something like ADD or ADHD, and you might find it challenging to focus on things or to prioritize tasks. And it's like, it's not you. You're not a bad person. You're not deficient in any way. It's just these outside factors that you might have no idea are happening, but that's what contributes to the problem.
Exactly right. And mental health is a multifaceted thing. So there's so many things that can impact mental health, from the biological aspects of the gut microbiome, the metabolites that the gut microbiome produces, along to traumas and other aspects that are more relationship driven, and also your own mental states and your own mental battles that you go through yourself. I find it's interesting that we create these certain parts of self. So a classic one is something we learnt in acting, is the protector. So the protector is like this persona that people create to protect themselves from trauma. But think of my protector, I visualize something like a hockey player, the hockey goalie. So he's got this mask, and he's a little child, really, because that's when this persona started to eventuate. But it becomes almost like a bit of a stone wall, and it really impacts your relationships, because when you have that protector archetype on, it's very difficult to connect with people because there's like a barrier between you and the other person. So I had to learn how to take off that armor, take off that protector, and tell him it's okay, it's safe. We can come out now. We can expose ourselves to others in a safe way, because he was there initially to protect me from that childhood trauma. But now that we're going through this healing process, he can step away. But I always know that that protector is there for me if I need it. But it's consciously using that protector archetype to serve you, not to impede you in some way.
Yeah. Yeah, it's so true. And I'd meet people sometimes where I feel like, gosh, that person's like really hard to talk to, or they're a bit standoffish, or they're just hard to work with. And I used to think, well, that's because I don't like them. But now when you think about it, it's like, hang on, did they have some trauma? Do they have some defense mechanism? And it's just created this harshness in their personality. It's not their fault. They probably don't want to do that. It's just that little kid in themselves to say, no, I got to be strong and push people away because I'm safe.
Exactly. It's exactly right. It's a coping mechanism when someone goes through trauma to actually survive that trauma. A lot of trauma victims also go through a lot of these issues, but they're not cognizant and aware that they have these protector archetypes on top of them to protect them. So in that interaction with that person, they weren't conscious that they potentially had that archetype. But when you become aware of it, then it becomes something that you can use as a tool versus something that you're just not conscious about.
Yeah, 100%. You can be more open with people. No, I think it's amazing, Kriben. I think you working through all this stuff and finding solutions and repairing the relationships with your wife and building relationships with your family. I just think it's amazing, man. A lot of people don't do that, and I commend you for that. So one of the big questions we had is, where have you been the last little while? What's been happening in your life? And yeah, I think it'd be good to give a bit of an update.
Where do we start? I mean, talk about hitting the lows in my mental health challenges and coming out of it, building really healthy foundational aspects of my life in terms of diet, lifestyle. And then now I've been thrown a real curveball in my life, and people might have noticed I haven't been as active on social media or podcasting and things like that over the last year or so. And the reason being is that I got thrown a curveball August of last year. So I was actually diagnosed last year with stage 4 colon cancer, and complete shock. Absolutely, it floored me. It literally floored me, because here I am having a show called The Gut Health Gurus, having a business, Nourish Me Organics, that's all about digestive health. And me being an example of, or trying to be an example of how to live a healthy life, and especially looking after your gut. And I end up with colon cancer, out of all things. And it shocked me.
Yeah, it's crazy, and I'm so sad that it happened to you. And it's crazy as well, because I think about it, I'm like, you're the most healthy person I know. Like how? I don't get it. Yeah, it's crazy.
It was a shock, and we'll start from the initial signs. So in May of last year, I did start to notice some blood in my stool. I didn't think much of it because my diet was perfect. I thought it was perfect at the time. So lots of fiber consumption, organic food, mainly cooked from scratch at home. So an extremely clean diet, very, very clean diet. So I didn't think that it was anything nefarious. I thought maybe an ulcer or maybe some sort of hemorrhoid or something like that was creating bleeding. So I left it. I didn't go for a checkup or anything like that. I felt fine. I was still very functional. There's no really impediment in my life at all. So I didn't think much of it. But eventually, over the course of a few months, I did start to notice some pain in my stomach. And it was so funny. I was at university. I'm still studying at Torrens University. I'm doing a Bachelor of Health. And one of the research paper I had to write was around colon cancer. And so when I started to investigate colon cancer from a scientific perspective, a lot of the signs and a lot of the symptoms I was experiencing myself. So I'm like, oh my God. And then as part of my course, I had to do a little bit of almost like an internship thing with a friend of mine who was kind enough to have me, Dr. Damien Christoph. And so I was in his clinic and just observing him as a practitioner. And then I mentioned to him, these are the symptoms I'm having. Okay, I'm having a bit of pain in my stomach. There's some blood. I've lost some weight, but I have been trying to be fitter and healthy and lose body fat. Didn't think much of that. I'm having these night sweats that are really odd. I've never had these before. It's so weird. And he was like, oh my God, Kriben, here's a doctor you should see, and just do it straight away. Drop everything, just go to the doctor, get checked up, get a colonoscopy. So I went into the doctor's, told her what was happening. She booked me a referral to see a gastroenterologist, went under, came out of the colonoscopy, and the doctor looked at me and he said, I can't get the tube through your colon. Your tumor is like around 6 centimeters. It's like a mandarin-sized tumor. I can't get this through your colon. This is not great, and we're going to do some scans. So they did some scans, and yep, sure and behold, it was a 6 centimeter tumor in my colon, in the sigmoid area, just above the rectum. And then there was 2 substantial tumors around 3 to 4 centimeters on my liver, and then 6 really small ones in my lungs. So I was floored, literally floored. Went into deep, dark depression. How did this happen? Why did this happen to me? I'm supposed to be this pillar of health, supporting my community, and how did I get sick like this? And so it was a deep dive into how it happened, which we can talk about, my theories on how it happened.
Yeah, man, it's just crazy. It's just nuts, because I guess that's for a lot of people that's like one of the biggest fears out there, that you go and get the check, you notice some early signs, you go and get the check, and they say, hey, it's actually really serious. So at that point, when you're finding out about all this information, what are they telling you about your life and how serious it is?
Well, it was really serious, because we went to stage 4, pretty much straight away. Normally it takes a long time to actually go from detection to stage 4 when the actual cancer breaks its containment area from that particular organ and then metastasizes and spreads through the lymphatic system into other organs. But for me, I just went from stage nothing to stage 4. So initially they told me your bowel is obstructed. We need to rush you within 2 days to get a bowel resection done. And that was terrifying to me, absolutely terrifying. My greatest fear is having a stoma. And if someone doesn't know what a stoma is, it's basically having a hole in your stomach where the poop comes out. So it's like having a bag for the rest of your life. And that's one of my greatest fears. Absolutely terrified. And sometimes I think I'd rather be dead than having that carried around for the rest of my life. What type of quality of life can I really have having a stoma? So I was very resistant to surgery. And my prognosis wasn't great. It would literally probably be a matter of months, because the tumors are growing so fast, and because they're spread everywhere, and then having a risk of bowel obstruction as well. So it's just losing lots of weight because I couldn't eat properly. I couldn't go to the bathroom. It was really difficult because it was that massive blockage. But then I started to do a lot of research into this topic. deep dives into different subject matters related to the topic. And then I thought, well, even if I take that cancer out, how is the liver going to fare with all the chemicals that are going to be used during that operation, with antibiotics and anesthesia and all these other chemicals and drugs that they were going to give me? The greatest chance of me dying is probably a liver issue or liver failure. And I lost my brother to liver failure. So I know that very intimately. I watched him die within a course of 4 months, miserably, horribly, one of the worst experiences in my life. So I know what liver failure looks like. So then I thought to myself, there must be another way. There has to be another way I could give myself the greatest chance to get as much life as I can now, because I know I have this chronic illness, but how do I extend my life as much as I can so then I get to watch my children get married, get to see my grandchildren, get to experience life, get my wife and I experiencing as much time as we have together. So I realized that maybe Australia, the system here, the conventional system, wasn't a good place to start. So then I started to look overseas and what options I have, and we can talk about that if you like.
Yeah. Let's get into that. And so this was last year in August when you found out. And how old are you now for the listeners?
So I've just turned 48. So diagnosis, I was 47.
Yeah, gosh. And prior to this, I mean, like I said, you've always been one of the healthiest people I know. So is it right in saying prior to this, perfect health, and then all of a sudden you have stage 4 colon cancer?
That's a good question. When I reflect back on what the potential causes are, I was under extreme amounts of stress. During that period of time, say between October 2024 to August 2025, during that period, there was so much stress. We were having a lot of legal problems with our business at that time, like extremely stressful problems, regulatory issues, unfairly, I think, mind you. But it is what it is. But I had to deal with all those issues, and I've never been that stressed in my life.
How stressful are we talking? Are we talking like can't sleep, anxiety every day, like totally terrible headspace? Like how bad was that stress?
On a scale of 1 to 10, I would say I was 8 and 9 stress levels through most of that period of time.
Yeah, gosh.
Because it was a cascading event after event. Started with one issue, cascaded to another issue and another issue. Then I went back to uni as well during that time period. So all the stress of uni at the same time too. Running the business, uni, dealing with all those legal problems, multiple legal issues. And that then culminated in me ending up with cancer. So that was, I think, the big trigger. The stress suppressed my immune system to a point that allowed the cancer cells to take a foothold in my body. And then when I investigated what was happening in my microbiome, which is related to gut health and colonic health, I discovered that my gut profile from the time I tested, probably a few years before that, to the time of testing was substantially in dysbiosis.
Wow.
So I picked, because I'd lived in Indonesia for quite a few years, like through that COVID era time.
Mm.
And so I suspect I picked up some pathogens. So the pathogens I found in my gut, things like colobactin creating, what's a type of toxin, colobactin, produced by certain types of E. coli bacteria, Aeromonas species, Bacteroides species, all related to colon cancer. So there was a lot of Fusobacterium is another one. So there was a lot of bacteria that had cancer associations, and Colobactin E. coli are actually cancer-causing agents. So those bacteria can actually create toxins. It's called Bactin, is E. coli bacteria, creating toxins that can facilitate DNA damage, which could then cascade into cancers.
Yeah, gosh. Okay, so you find out you've got stage 4 colon cancer, it's spread, there's multiple tumors, you're doing some deep dive research into it all. What do you do next? And am I right in understanding that the advice was let's get them all cut out, let's go with intense chemotherapy? Can you walk us through what did you do next?
So the conversation at that time was with just a gastroenterologist or a surgeon that does colon removal type procedures. So I didn't speak to an oncologist at that point. But what I did start to look at is who could be the best person in the world that could help me that's accessible. And I found a doctor in Germany that was an oncologist, and he was a gastroenterologist. So he had that perfect combination of both cancer and also digestive health backgrounds. So I initially had a consultation with him, and he said, "You're right. I don't think surgery is the right option at this point. I think what you should do is try and shrink these tumors as much as possible."
Why, just to jump in, why did he say surgery wasn't the right choice at that time?
For the same reason that I alluded to earlier, is because even if you take out the primary tumor, you're then going to impair your immune system. And then how is the other tumors going to react? So your immune system is trying to keep these things in check. So if you have major surgery, then a lot of the body's resources are going to go into healing that wound of surgery. And then how is then the liver going to react? Because then the liver has to clear out all the drugs that are used in the surgery, which take a lot of liver power to get rid of it. But then you've also got these 2 huge tumors in your liver. So his approach was like, let's shrink the tumors down and then let's see what options are possible.
Right, rather than putting your body under all that stress and all those chemicals in there while you're already, weakened.
Exactly.
Okay, so what did he suggest?
So I spent 2 months, and so I jumped on a plane straight away, went to Germany in Stuttgart with the Dr. Asiya Kopik. It was intense treatments, and it was harsh. So initially we started off doing a lot of infusion type treatments. So they would put infusions into my blood. So different types of medicines and supplements and things like that. To then all sort of his approach was trying to attack the tumors from multiple angles. So he'd use a combination of conventional treatments, but then also some naturopathic / alternative treatments as well. I think it's called German Western medicine or something like that.
And was there any type of chemotherapy at this point?
Yes. So after I was sitting in this clinic like 2 or 3 hours a day, probably every second day, I'd say. Lots of infusions. And then he actually referred me to another doctor, and his name was Dr. Vogel, and he was based in Frankfurt. And so his approach was, it's a chemotherapy, but it's very direct into the organ. So then what they do is they use the artery in your thigh, this femoral artery, and then they use that to access the liver. So I had 3 of those treatments where the chemotherapy was infused directly into the organ. So rather than being systemically throughout the body, they would just target that organ, whether it's the liver or the colon. So that was the chemotherapy that I received. It wasn't systemic. It was very targeted. It was very harsh. There was a lot of side effects. I actually almost died the first time.
What happened?
So when I had the treatment, I didn't realize that the side effects were going to be like so intense. So what had happened is basically peristalsis in my gut shut down. So literally everything that just got blocked. So my gut just stopped working. So I was extremely constipated. I had extreme nausea. And then I think I was straining on the toilet at the time because I was so constipated. I couldn't sleep. I was in so much pain, I literally couldn't sleep. So I couldn't sleep for 2 nights. I literally had to sit up on my bed upright and just close my eyes and try and get some semblance of sleep. But then when I was on the bathroom, the artery in my leg actually started to leak. So the artery in my leg that they used to put the needle through, it burst.
Oh my God.
So then my left leg, my thigh swelled up like a balloon.
Oh my God.
With blood. And then I passed out on the floor. My wife was screaming, called an ambulance, ended up in hospital, and they stabilized me. But I could have really bled out. It was horrific. My wife was super traumatized by the whole experience.
Yeah, my gosh. This just sounds like an absolute nightmare of an experience.
Yep. It was a nightmare, but after the third taste, I think I'll talk about the other treatments that I did that are pretty unconventional.
And as well, is part of going to Germany, are you saying that these types of treatments are not available in Australia, or is it just you found this guy and he's in Germany?
I think a lot of the treatments are not available in Australia. Australia follows like a standard of care system. So a lot of the things that are done overseas are a little bit more novel versus what's available here in Australia. Don't get me wrong, Australia's got a great system. It just, for me, where I was at in my thinking, I had to explore something different first from how I was feeling at that time. I couldn't really go down that surgical route that they wanted me to go. So the other things that were pretty unconventional, aside from the taste, I saw another doctor who was based near Munich, a place called Bern, I think, from memory. So he does a treatment called a dendritic cell vaccine. So what they do is they extract blood out of your body and they extract your circulating tumor cells. They extract your dendritic cells, which is a type of immune cell. And then they train those dendritic cells. And then a week later, they do this all in a lab. And then after they've trained the dendritic cells, they inject it back into you. So that dendritic cell is then meant to present to other immune cells, like a T cell, to then train that T cell to then go after the tumor cells. So that's the theory behind it. So I did that. The other interesting thing is that for my tumor type, immunotherapy in Australia wasn't an option. But in Germany, because they combined the dendritic cell with the immunotherapy, they could administer that to me, even though my cancer type wasn't conducive to it. And taking a step backwards, another thing I did while I was still in Australia is I sent a sample of my tumor. So I had to get access to the tumor that they took out during the biopsy. That got sent to the UK. The company, it's called an Exacta Plus test. And so what they do is they do analysis on those tumor cells, and then they actually expose your own tumor cells to different types of agents, whether it's chemotherapy, supplements, repurposed medications, and then they tell you which of these approaches may be helpful in your treatment process.
Yeah, wow. It just keeps on making me think about how it's not that there's anything wrong with our medical system here, but it just highlights there's such a difference when you're a really active participant in your own health. Like you're researching things, you're trying to make decisions. You're not just sort of going on with, all right, if the doctor says that, that's what I have to do. You're being an active participant in this.
Absolutely right. It's your life, and you have to give yourself the best chance by being most informed and also helping your doctors by providing as much information as possible. Because a lot of the times they're treating so many patients. And one thing that really stood in my mind when I compare Australia, the people that I saw here versus Germany, the doctors here always made me feel like I was on death's door, that there wasn't much. the framing was very negative.
The framing in Australia was very negative.
Yes, extremely negative. And every time I spoke to one of these doctors, I ended up feeling depressed because it was like almost the same thing every time with these doctors. Like, they're really negative. They make you feel like you're going to die, pretty much, that your life is over. Whereas the German doctors were super positive. And the way I felt was like complete gentlemen, beautiful human beings. And they made me feel like they had me. It's like, no, we've got you. You can get better. That's how I felt inside. Yeah, I think that helped me immensely.
I think so, man. Even just from like a mental health point of view, or just like feeling more optimistic about it. Like, if everyone's telling you it's game over, like, that's so much harder to feel motivated about finding a solution.
Completely. And my journey with cancer is I truly believe a lot of it is mindset and willing your body to fight. So surrounding myself with these positive doctors helped me so much. And so the other thing I did, so I did the immunotherapy with the dendritic cell vaccine. Prior to that, because the Dr. Kopic, who was a gastroenterologist, looked at my microbiome results, he also concurred with me that it could be some microbes in my gut that were dysbiotic, that were potentially driving the disease process. But from a literature point of view, they also affect how your body reacts to different chemotherapies and different types of drugs that are used in cancer treatment. So shifting my microbiome from dysbiosis, which is having an abnormal microbiome, to eubiosis, which is having a balanced microbiome, cognizant of those different types of pathogens or different types of bacteria that might be steering you in the wrong direction, either from cancer progression, growth, or treatment results. So he recognized that, and we did something pretty drastic. We actually took poop from my wife, and she was born in the jungles of Cambodia. So it's like the most indigenous flora that I could access. And I was fortunate enough my wife had that. So we did a fecal transplant. So they took her poop, put it inside of me. And almost within days, I noticed a difference. The tumors start to shrink, the colon tumors start to shrink. I was able to eat a lot of foods that I couldn't digest very well, like beans and legumes. The doctor led me more towards a fiber-rich, resistant starch, plant-based style of eating, limiting red meat consumption to maybe a couple of times a week, having more sort of chicken and fish, but getting most of my protein from legumes and beans. And that's the diet I've been following ever since. So limiting red meat consumption, but focusing heavily on a variety of different fibers and resistant starch.
Yeah, wow. Also, shout out to your wife. What a legend. She's totally got your back. That's dedication there. Kriben, I feel like what you're saying is it's almost like you're speaking like another language to me, because I'm like, it makes such a huge difference. Your knowledge, your expertise, these different things that you're trying, these different techniques. It's like, some people might only have, all right, the doctor said do ABC, and you're like, all right, well, all I got is ABC, but you've got like every letter in the alphabet. You're throwing at this thing, trying and testing things. It's incredible. Question: when you initially found out on that cancer that you had stage 4, did they give you a time limit? Did they say how long you had to live?
They didn't really speak about a prognosis, and I think it's probably a good thing, because if you tell someone you've only got a few months to live. But I did my own research, and I'm curious, like, how much time do I really have? And so I did my research, and realistically, I gave myself a few months.
Yeah, gosh.
And I spoke to my children about it, and they broke down. My eldest son broke down. It's traumatic for kids to hear that your dad's in this situation. The middle son also broke down in tears. The youngest didn't fully comprehend it, so he was okay. But they didn't give me a long time, James. Not a long time at all.
Yeah,
from looking at the research, I surmised I didn't have a lot of time.
So you get this diagnosis. Prior to that, you're the picture of health. You get this diagnosis, you get a couple of months to live. You go through all these different treatments. Nightmare experience. What happens next after you're doing all these treatments?
So the going into the third TACE, which is the trans-arterial chemo embolization with Dr. Vogel, they normally scan. They do I think it's either a CT, MRI, I can't remember, but they did a scan. And before my last TACE treatment, the doctor was like, "What happened? What did you do? Your tumors have shrunk by more than 50%. And so I explained to him, so I went through faecal transplant, I did immunotherapy, we did this dendritic cell vaccine, because he said something happened here. The tumors are shrinking. So
Is this your Australian doctor saying this, or is this
This is the Dr. Vogel in Frankfurt.
Got it.
And then I did my final TACE, but at that time, then I knew how to manage the symptoms. It was all fine. There was no substantial side effects. I literally, after TACE treatments, just for the audience to be aware, you just have to be like immobile for like 4 days. Because any movement and that's a mistake I made, I was moving too much, can cause these ruptures in these arteries that they're using or accessing on either side of the legs. So, and then since then, I've just been gradually monitoring my tumor cells and my markers. So initially my circulating tumor count, and people might understand these numbers. So initially they were like, I think around the 200 mark. Normal should be less than 3. So when I came back from Germany, I measured like straight away. They dropped to like 40. So then I measured again a couple of weeks ago. They've dropped to 20. So something is happening with all the changes that I'm using. So whether it's now I'm using a chemotherapy tablet that was prescribed by my German doctor, it's called 5-FU or capecitabine, I think is the name of the drug. So I use that. I use some supplements. Diet is a big thing. And then I use some off-label repurposed medications. So everything is moving in the right direction. What the medical team here in Australia are talking about and working on my case is to move me towards surgery, chemotherapy, surgery on the liver, surgery on the colon, and then chemotherapy to clean things up. So that's where I'm at the moment. So these are the decisions I need to make moving forward. My situation is stable. I'm positive. My life has gone back to normal. I'm starting to put my weight back on after initially having a cancer cachexia, which is substantial weight loss. My night sweats have stopped. So everything at the moment is stable. So it's stable and normal. But now it's the big decisions to be made on what's going to happen moving forward.
Yeah, Kriben, what you're explaining is incredible. Like, I almost feel like you belong in a medical journal. Like, you've reduced these cancers, you've reduced these tumor size, you've extended your life, you've saved yourself. Like, this is incredible what you're explaining.
Thank you, James. I feel like there's a long way to go. So over the course of these few months, we've managed to stabilize the illness. So we did it. Another thing we did, I forgot to mention, was we did a PET scan. So the PET scan is where they use like a dye and they inject glucose dye into your body, and they have some sort of radioactive tag. So they'll always say, oh, you're just about to go radioactive. Then they put it through your blood. So what that does, that goes into any cancer cells, and then when they scan it, it lights up. So the last scan that I did initially, obviously there was a lot of spots, the 2 spots in my liver, the colon and lungs that were lighting up. So after the last scan, I came back after the treatments in Germany. So the tumors now have shrunk substantially. So the liver tumors now are basically around 1 centimeter. So they're on that threshold of PET scan detection. The ones in the lungs are all below PET scan detection. So there's basically no activity that's detected in a PET scan. It's just below the ability to detect. So they might be there, they might not be there. We don't know, but they're very small. And the colon tumor is now around that 1 centimeter mark as well. So
that's insane. So you're telling me a 6 centimeter tumor has now been reduced to just under 1 centimeter?
Yep.
That's incredible, man.
It's miraculous. It's really miraculous from where I was at to really thinking that I'm cooked, I'm done. Now coming out of that journey, obviously a long way to go, but I'm feeling a lot more optimistic.
Yeah, gosh. What do you make of all this? This is such a crazy roller coaster that you've been on, and you've come out the other side. Like, what do you think about all of this?
When I reflect upon it, I think it's very similar to my mental health journey. It's like I had to go through those issues to work out how to address it. Excuse me. And then after I find a way, then potentially I could share my journey with others and inspire them. Because cancer is a very scary disease. When you first get it, your life crumbles. Your reality crumbles. And you find yourself asking, how did I get in this position? Why me? I'm not the one eating junk food. I'm not the one drinking excessive amounts of alcohol. I'm not the one smoking. Why me? I don't have a history of cancer. But I truly believe in all my heart that perhaps I had to go through this journey. Maybe it's something divinely inspired. Then I can inspire others. But look, I don't know how this journey ends for me. There's still uncertainty. But I'm going to do my best and hopefully inspire others who are in this position. And I'll tell you, there is going to be a lot of us in this position. The rates of cancers at the moment are unbelievable. It's literally like 1 in 2 for men. I think women might be 1 in 3. So it's going to touch everyone's lives. But hopefully people watching this interview, watching this story, hopefully I'll be able to give them hope.
Yeah.
That always ask for a second opinion.
Yeah.
Never go with the first opinion. Always ask a second opinion, and you're responsible for your health and your treatment. It's up to you. No one can force you to do anything. You have to make the decisions that are best for you and your family. So I think that's maybe it's another mission. Maybe it's just another quest for me to go on. But I've got a long way to go, James.
Yeah.
It's a long way to go.
Yeah.
And something I forgot to mention. And it literally only came out, I think, maybe last week, where Reuters published a study conducted by Dr. Gabor Shomlai on deuterium depleted water and cancer. So I highly recommend anyone who knows someone in this position or is going through it themselves to look at the work of Dr. Gabor Shomlai, to look for his book, read his book, because that was another thing that I used in my treatment was deuterium depleted water. So literally when I was in Germany, I had it sent over from Hungary and I used it right through my treatment process, and I still use it now. Initially, I started at about 80 ppm, and I'm gradually reducing it by 20 ppm. So now I'm at 60 ppm. And every 3 months or so, I'm going to drop it lower. So the next one's going to be 40 ppm. So that's another option for people to explore as well.
Yeah, yeah. So, I mean, there's so much in this story, and it really is incredible. One question that comes to mind is if our listeners have friend, family member, someone who's just being diagnosed or going through it, what advice would you give to them? Like, what do people who are going through it, what do they need?
I think cancer is it's a bit of a catch-all phrase for many different dysfunctions. So one person's cancer might be completely different to someone else's cancer. So I think that person then needs to obviously trust their medical practitioners and follow their guidance. So make that clear. Follow your oncologist, listen to your medical practitioners. Also do your own research. Look for what's happening in other countries in the world. Maybe there's treatment options for your cancer type. So the first step is understanding your cancer. Use something like an Exacta Plus test. Get that done. Understand the different genetic elements of your cancer type, and then start to explore across the world what are the best options. Because at the end of the day, by empowering yourself with knowledge, then you can choose the best path to give you the best chance to get through it.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And how about from an emotional standpoint? Like, you've been through this. You were probably in the scariest position that people face when they face these things. What would you say? What do people who are going through it, what kind of emotional support they need? What should people say to somebody who's going through it?
That's a really good question. I've been pretty private with my cancer journey. Of course, now it's going to be public and well known. But initially I was very guarded and very embarrassed about it, because me being the gut health guru, you end up with colon cancer. Is it some sort of joke? Not the... How does it happen? Go figure. But I think it is important to have a confidant. So I have some friends that I can talk to about these things openly, my struggles. I have a couple of good friends that I bounce off. One's medical, got a medical background. The other's just a really nice, empathetic guy. So definitely talking about it helps. And then your support network around you. And I think what I'm drawn towards the most is people who are positive, because I need to uplift, keep my mood up, myself positive, and surround myself with other positive energies so that I can get through this. The worst thing for me is being around negative people. So I think that's something that a listener that's going through this could take on board as well, is just be really positive, stay positive. That's why they call it the placebo effect, because in clinical studies, sometimes the mind is so powerful that it influences results. So they have to have a placebo group. So why can't we use that placebo effect to heal our bodies?
Yeah, I love that. And it's I think it's just such an important point about having that positivity around you and having that support. I think that's key. I think a consistent message of sharing is, you're not saying don't listen to your doctor. You're just saying be open and do your own research and be informed. Obviously you're very well informed about these things, and you were able to go to Germany and find this person. Is there something else people can do? Like, say they can't go overseas, or they can't, maybe they're limited in funds or whatever it is, but like, is there something simple that they can start with to start figuring this all out?
Well, to go overseas, you're right, is expensive, and sometimes might not be accessible to all people. But I can tell you, in that German clinic with Dr. Koppig, more than half the clinic, the patients there were actually Australians. And some of them, they're not wealthy people. But what they did is they valued their lives, where people made sacrifices. There was a lady from the UK that I met in Frankfurt with Dr. Vogel that sold her house to actually go and receive treatment. She was terminal. She had multiple metastases, including in her brain. She sold her house. She was one of the most positive people that you could meet. She looked fit, she looked healthy, but she made that sacrifice for her health financially to go and get better. So if the options are not available here, because obviously a lot of treatments here are covered by Medicare, so it's going to be a lot more affordable. But sometimes I encourage people to make that extra leap, because how valuable is your life? What value do you put on your life? Sometimes you have to make that sacrifice. And I had to make some sacrifices to go to Germany. And I'll tell you, it's not cheap. It's not cheap, but how much do I value my life? how do I value my time on this earth? So I had to make that investment. Unfortunately, in Australia, we have to work within what's available here. And it's still great. People have great results. Sometimes if you want to explore other countries, you might have to make that financial sacrifice.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think as we wrap up, I think in some ways you going through this experience and being the gut health gurus kind of made you like an absolute expert in this because you've had real life experience with this. I mean, it's terrible, but it also you understand the entire thing. You're probably one of the top most educated and experienced people in this space. So I guess my question is, what's next for Gut Health Gurus, for Nourish Me Organics? What do you feel like your next mission is?
Well, the first step is to get fully right. So I'm in remission, which is positive. Now it's to get myself back to full health, to get to a point where it's beyond stable. We've conquered this illness, we're managing it. Whether I go down conventional paths or explore other options, that's still undecided. So there's uncertainty in that space. Anytime you go into surgery, there's risks. So think about cancer like a game of chess. So you're playing moves, the cancer's playing moves, and so you're hoping to to win the game by playing the right moves. So sometimes you might make a misstep, and then there's always consequences to that. So that's my thinking at the moment. So there's a whole lot of uncertainty, so I don't know how to fully answer the question. But in terms of Nourish Me, Nourish Me is kicking along. It's great. We're helping lots of people improve their digestive health. The fermented food side of our company is doing really well. There's lots of novel products that we're introducing for people to make their own yogurts and whatnot. Our Wuchua yogurt is something that's really popular. But I'll still keep giving my all in Nourish Me, But first, I've got to get myself right.
Yeah.
Fully invested into Nourish Me again.
Yeah, 100%, Kriben. I mean, yeah, incredible story. Thinking about your entire journey and this latest situation that you're finding your way through. But yeah, it's incredible, man. Like all power to you. And my prayers are that you make a full, complete recovery and you have all your health and everything just goes the way you want it. But man, thank you for sharing. Like I got a lot out of listening to this and hearing more about it and being here with you.
Thank you, James. I appreciate you having this space for me to openly share what I'm going through. I couldn't sleep last night thinking about releasing this to my community. So I'm extremely scared about how they're going to take this news. But I just want them to know that I'm doing well. I'm positive. I'm upbeat. I'm confident I'm going to beat this. So I just ask for people's prayers. I ask for your support as much as you can to help me get through it. But hopefully my story will inspire someone else that's going through this journey as well to know it's nothing to be afraid of and that it can be conquered.